Good morning and welcome to our Budget Finance Committee meeting for June 23rd, 2026. It's 9 a.m. I'd like to call our meeting to order. Mr. Booth, can you give us an indication?
Yes, ma'am. If you'll all join me in a quick word of prayer. Dear Lord, we just thank you for a chance to come together and meet in this great city. Lord, we just thank you for the amazing blessings that you give us in this city every day. Lord, we look forward to celebrating the birth of our nation over the next 2 weeks, Lord, and we thank you for the blessing of being able to be here in this nation. Lord, we ask that you give your guidance to the council today, as we wrestle with the decisions on financing the city, Lord, and we give these thanks in your precious name. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Councilman Lewandowski, give us the pledge.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Booth, the roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Rodenoff.
Here.
And Councilman Lewandowski.
Here.
Mayor, you have
Oh.
the Budget and Finance Committee form ready.
Huh? Yes, okay, yeah, we're here, very well. Alrighty, so let's see, do we have any public comments?
And just for the record, if anybody's watching on the video, we do not have any members of the public in attendance in the conference room, and we have no written comments provided.
Okay, and on the consent agenda, Mr. Dan, are you?
I have no comments. I like it.
Like it, okay. Can I get an approval for our minutes? I
Yeah.
guess we need to do that, right?
Right. I don't think we have there's no voting or approval or anything.
Okay,
So just consent.
excellent, thank you. Action items, first of all, the May 2026 financial documents for all accounts. And we have an attachment that says May 2026 financials.
Yes, okay. So what was provided are the typical financials. And so you'll see that the standard document that's in here. In that one document, we condensed all of the general fund, both the general fund, the infrastructure fund, cemetery fund, and community redevelopment agency trust fund documents, as well as the balance sheets are in there. I'm going to provide just a quick summary by budget area, or excuse me, by fund, and I'll pause in each of the funds and see if you have any questions. I'll just go off the top, as I've said several times. We continue to work. We're talking on the balance sheets for all the funds. We continue to work with Rebecca on getting them cleaned up, particularly the balance sheet on the general fund, though you won't see any significant changes on it. But we think we have a way forward for a lot of it next month.
Okay.
In the general fund, year-to-date income is $1,189,000. That's rounded to the $1,000. And then year-to-date expenses are $1,028,000. And so our year-to-date income exceeds expenses by $161,000. This gap is going to decrease as property tax income is front-loaded at the beginning of the year. So we will always generally see more income overall for the city in the front end of the year, and it tailors off where typically our income in the last 3 months is going to not exceed expenses. That's because one of our major funding sources, property taxes, comes in heavy at the front end of the year. In the last quarter, let's see. Oh, last thing is that we do also need to transfer approximately $100,000 of property tax income from the general fund over to the Community Redevelopment Agency Trust Fund to cover the city increment for the CRA. And so that will take $100,000, that $161,000 difference right now, drop it down to get it more normalized where income and expenses are getting pretty close to where they were budgeted. I'll pause and see if either of you have any questions on the general fund financials from last month.
So I would ask on page 4. I was reading through all the expenses and everything, and I was looking for a line item that said total expenses. And your words that you just shared with me indicate the third from the bottom of the line is total expenses, but it's just not identified as such. And so for me and for a general public who'd be looking at this document, I was lost. I didn't know which one was total expenses.
Yeah.
So if you could just label that for me in the future.
We will, mine has just been cut off. When we pulled this out of QuickBooks and converted over to a Excel spreadsheet, it probably just got lost. We'll just double check it before we send it out the next time, but correct.
Just to help in understanding.
Mhm.
And then I would just overall say I generally look for differences of 10% or more, and everywhere I looked, everything looked. We're getting much better at this. It's looking much cleaner. You know, we still have a couple areas where we straight line, like property tax income, and we probably shouldn't straight line that income. We should reflect more reality when it really does come in.
It's not, actually, we did some, when we built this back in January or February, we used, we went back and looked a couple of years, and so the property tax line over each month is built front-loaded, but it's just not, and you just never know. So these last months, I just estimated the last 3 months would be 12,000, the last 3 or 4 months would be 12,000, I think, and it's just over what we actually got. So it is not straight lined, but my guess at what a monthly at the tail end of the year is just not what it's coming in at. I don't see my guess. It was my,
Okay.
yeah, our educated guess
Yeah.
at what it's gonna come in was off.
Right. So in general, I'm trying to compliment you. You're doing a good job, and the better you can do it, the better off we'll all be.
We will keep refining it.
Keep
Thank you,
doing
sir.
that, Yes.
Tiffany
I agree.
and Tiffany's been doing a great job.
A lot of
Knocking it all out.
detail work.
Yeah, it
And
is.
rework, you know,
Right.
and it's come a long way for sure, especially in the last 12 months for sure.
And it's an art and a science at the same time. You know, it's taking historical trends and using them to your advantage, but it's also predicting the future. You know, pulling out your crystal ball and saying what's going to happen, and you know, so it's going to be inaccurate. But the less inaccuracy we have, the better off we'll all be.
I think it's tough. If I remember correctly, May we got 3,000. Double check. How much was it? Property taxes came in? 3,500.
And then we got a 10,000.
This month we got a $10,000.
Yeah, you
So
got
it's-
the diversity of
It's
the
gonna
county.
fluctuate because
Yeah.
still, like whoever's gonna pay their taxes that month,
Yeah.
or, you know, so
Right.
it just depends.
So that one's probably the toughest to
Yeah, there's just so much inconsistency,
Right.
it's hard.
There's so
to
much
make it perfect.
flexibility in there. Most of the other ones do seem to be, our educated budgeting seem to be working.
You're doing
But
excellent.
we can always keep it refining it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on over to the infrastructure account. I'm sorry, in your packet, I can just follow as they showed up in the packet, let me do that. And so that was general fund sheet, and next in the packet was cemetery fund? Cemetery fund. So for the cemetery fund revenue, total revenue realized was 42,000 for the year of a total budget of 50,000 annual budget for revenue. Expenses 69,000 executed out of a projected 131,000. Our primary under execution right now is about $40,000 in road network repairs. And this, depending on capacity of some of our engineers and the timing of different engineering firms that I wanted to use, this one's likely to be delayed and moved into next fiscal year. What we did get executed were all the cemetery landscaping, the watering system, and the building upgrades were all done. So in general, that one performed well. We just didn't get the timing of working on that soft sand area and trying to improve the road there. And I will pause if there's any questions on the cemetery fund.
I like your plan to move it to next year. We're already over budget for the cemetery, you know, 23,000 over budget for this year. And so, I don't wanna dig into the perpetual fund, money that much. And so, I totally support that move and we're prepared next year.
All right. And I'll move on to Community Redevelopment Trust Fund. So my notes are that we received approximately 131,000 out of 220 budgeted. We just need to move the roughly $100,000 of city increment from the general fund into the Community Redevelopment Trust Fund to complete our revenue for the fiscal year. I mentioned to one of y'all separately, over the previous years, we would get a check from the county. We just mentioned our check from the county. We'd actually get two different allocations. I don't know if it was two different checks or it was broken out in line items. So we knew what was standard city property tax that goes into the general fund. And we also had a line item that told us the city increment of property tax that should be going into the Community Redevelopment Trust Fund. We have, this year, all they've been doing is just sending us a check. And so I've reached out over 3 weeks ago to the county and asked the question, can you break out the difference in what should be going into the CRA? And they acknowledged the request, and I haven't heard from them since on that issue. And so I'll end up following. I failed to follow up with them over the last week. So we're working on it, but I think in our best effort to make sure that the funds are in the right places is just to move what we've budgeted. We know it's going to be in that area, and move that in while we're trying to confirm exactly what the dollars and cent down to the decimal should be. Yes, oh, that's right. I went ahead and asked Tiffany to go ahead and do that. So it'll reflect in the June financials. All that will show reflected complete. Expenditures. So 167,000 of 476,000 that were budgeted is where we're at. $30,000 in parking design and $160,000 in museum construction funding. It's been delayed pending our fire station acquisition grant. And so no action has been taken on the design. Also, no action has been taken on design of Phase 2 trailhead. However, the CRA board and the council in the last month's meeting approved those funds to be used to get the tennis court and basketball court lighting overhaul. And so we're awaiting quotes on that project. So that's the lighting. And then finally, $30,000 in real estate acquisitions continues to pen property negotiations with the owner. We have a targeted parcel, still just working with the owner to get to yes. So, that's all I have on the Community Redevelopment Agency Trust Fund. Any other questions?
Looks good.
This is one of the cases where I'm happy we have a negative income expense. We need to show that we're using the CRA funds and not accumulating the CRA funds. So I'm happy with that.
Okay. And I think that later on in the upcoming plan, we've talked the capital improvement plan for both these funds. We'll be able to clearly explain how these funds play out over a 5-year period. To show that we're maintaining the fund, we're spending appropriately, so we'll keep improving that. Community Development Trust Fund. So last one is going to be the infrastructure account. So revenue for year-to-date revenue is 137,000 of a budgeted income of 162,000. That's coming in about 25% under if you just look at it on a month-to-month. The revenue stream for this one's been kind of hard to track due to some payment complications that we had with the state. I believe I mentioned it in this meeting. We had a hiccup when we were receiving a grant that all the state funds for everything that comes into us, and that's probably different 20 line items, started moving into a grant account that we established. And we realized there was miscommunication between us and the state, what we were doing. When we established that grant account, the state thought we were changing the general bank account where all the funds are supposed to go. And we thought they were telling us we had to establish a grant checking account. And so we've cleared all that up. It's all coming back into the general fund now, but sorting out where all those funds go is taking a while to get cleaned up. The last action where we're at right now that causes the difference in this budget, the income that goes into the infrastructure fund, is when the state does that payment. It's tough to get that month's payment into these financial documents for that month. So it tends to show a month underfunded by the budget. where now the money's in there in June. So we're getting the right amount, it's just this particular budget line is delayed by a month, so.
Kind of comes in arrears.
Right,
Exactly.
it's coming in.
We get a report in June,
Okay.
Mhm.
so the vendor payment history comes in June, so all of these funds need to go back to May, but I don't get the report till June, if that makes sense.
Okay.
The end of June,
Sir?
Early June.
early June it comes in?
Mhm.
Okay.
So we effectively have got the right amount, that we're up near that 162. And so on the expenses side, 246,000 have been expended out of 795 planned under this year's plan. It's one of the issues that we're pausing on why we haven't done quite a few of those expenditures is that we're waiting on the legislative appropriations we're waiting for the state budget to pass. And where we see we're likely competitive is the $210,000 in legislative appropriations for the Nightingale Culvert project, which would be in that in the planned expenses that we haven't done. And then a $25,000 appropriation for studying courses of action for City Hall or governance facility. And so we should know about the 1st of July, so the next time we meet, we'll know where we stand, if we're gonna need to expend city infrastructure funds on the Nightingale culvert repair, or if those funds can just be dropped to zero in the budget and we'll be executing state legislative appropriations to do that big repair of Nightingale culvert. Only 13.5 of the 50,000 expected to execute on the comprehensive flood vulnerability study right now. We've had another $10,000 check come in on that in June. So we're slowly paying that out. So this is one of those where we're $200,000 grant from the state. We have to complete the deliverables. We pay the engineering firm up front as they do the work. And then as we complete the deliverables, we back bill the state against the grant agreement. So, so we are keeping that $50,000 in there, keeps the cash flow going and keep the process moving. We've made slow progress on some of our sidewalk repair budget. We budgeted $50,000 for this year. We've only executed, even though it shows zero, we gotta check that. We've executed the $7,000 in concrete grinding work, and we'll work fairly heavily over the next 3 months to start coming in and actually doing the more expensive part, which is going in and tearing out concrete that just can't be ground down and needs to be fully replaced, and start working that off. It will not take long to go through $40,000 in concrete repair. It's expensive. And then finally, we've initiated scope of work discussions with Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering for a sidewalk design along Nightingale Street from where it terminates near the city limits all the way out to Sunrise Park, wrapping around Sunrise Park, to try and get that part connected as we've discussed. And so they're drafting up a scope of work and cost for the design work right now. So I expect by the time that we meet in July for the CRA board meeting and the city council meeting, I'll have a scope of work for you all to approve to keep that moving. That is all I have on the infrastructure account. Answer any questions you have.
Overspending by $500,000 is a little disconcerting for me. So if there are things that don't get done, and I'm specifically looking at, for example, the ADA sidewalk at Keystone Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, at least getting it done this year is no priority for me. I think that if the property tax issue on November ballot passes, one of the things we have to look at is the fishing pier doesn't happen. We just don't have money for it anymore. And so this would be related to that.
I think all we'll do on that one, all we're gonna have time this year to get through on that is gonna be, particularly on that project, I acknowledge the broader topic that you're speaking on. On the ADA sidewalk, I think we'll get to the point where we'll have a rough design and cost estimate to know what it would be like and where it may fit in the future for construction. So.
Okay.
That takes us through all the May financials. Pause if you have any other questions, and if not, we'll move on to, I'll be ready to move on to assets over $5,000.
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right.
Y'all are doing a great job with that. Definitely a very important action, I think, as we looked at yesterday. It's
Yes,
very,
ma'am.
very important. Appreciate all the work.
For assets over $5,000, we have done a rough assessment of what we do have off of the list that we're tracking, which we've showed you in the past. It's got a kind of a striking ad version of the Excel spreadsheet. And Bo and Miss Debbie are going through it in more detail. And so we'll probably by the next update have a much better version of this spreadsheet. Also, what we did, just because we needed to get it moving, the information that was on here and other documents were used to generate the capital improvement plan for the infrastructure account, the capital improvement schedule for the infrastructure account. And so a lot of our big ticket item equipment and what we call plant equipment or infrastructure is now sitting in the capital improvement plan. We'll hit that here in a minute, but it was all based on information from the work pulling this all together. So we'll continue to refine it. I don't think we'll have a perfect product this year, but it's in a much better shape than previous years. So we'll talk.
At least you have an idea,
Capital
where you are.
improvement. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'll pause and if you have any questions on the.
So just
items
for
or-
understanding purposes, if I could ask for a little bit more fidelity, like for example, under mowers, under equipment, you have 5 times, so I'm assuming that means there are 5 mowers.
Yes, sir.
And you have a value of 10K each. And so that to me is very clear. I like that. But where we say, for example, vehicles, we have 3 trucks, 1 van, 30K. Is that 30K for the 1 van? Is that 30K for the 3 trucks plus the van? What is the actual breakdown?
I lumped all 3 vehicles in because they're generally an F-150 equivalent. You know, effectively a light truck if light trucks are actually made in the United States anymore. So I just kind of used a rough estimate. For an example, we paid $20,000 for the last vehicle that the city procured, the black truck.
That's right.
And so I kind of overestimated. I don't think we'll probably ever get that deal again. But in general, for the replacement of a vehicle, I used a $30,000 estimate to get it
Okay,
in there.
so then I would ask you to say 30K each.
Sure.
You know, just make it really clear how much it is. Because some of these other things, like the generators, I don't know enough. So there's 2 generators, we have 20K. Is that 20K total, or is that 20K each?
20K each.
So if you would say 20K each, that would make it more clear for me.
Sure.
please. But like the mayor said, I'll just jump on this is a great start. This is exactly what I was looking for. You know, we need to track these assets. We need to plan for replacement rather than react when something breaks.
Yeah.
And then go, where's the money gonna come from?
Right. And I like the pushing it out 5 years, because it just helps you manage that inventory, and, you know, at the end of the day, it's a lot of investment there when you add it all up. Just like you said, 5 trucks, $150,000 there. 5
Yes, ma'am.
vehicles. Right.
And you guys, we need to start setting money aside.
Right.
I think the framework for the city was built out in 2012. I've showed you all each a policy I found as I was doing budget prep. Where the city's kind of laid out, here's our fiscal policy, here's our general rules we're gonna play by. And for each account, we should clearly state that we should be looking at a 5-year projection of carry forward, expenditures, and income, and how much you carry forward each year to make sure that they stay solvent. So it's a good process. It certainly helped me over the last couple of weeks as I was trying to build these out, understand how our budgets play out over multiple years.
So since I talked with you yesterday, I've been going through my brain. When I came on council in 2015, Terry Suggs was still our city manager. And at that point in time, a lot of credit was given to Councilman Paul Yates, especially for his roads and curbs.
Comp plan.
It was a 5-year plan.
Mhm.
And they were in year 3 of it, doing what they need to do for the roads and the curbs that they had planned. And they stuck to that, they really did. And I applauded that. So I'm sure that Councilman Yates wasn't the only one, but they referred to that specific plan as his plan and what we need to follow. So eventually, maybe we can do the same kind of thing for our sidewalks, that kind of a thing. I don't know exactly what it would be. Partially it'd be driven by how much money we have.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll
Well,
look
just
up
like
that
when you
roads and
showed us-
curbs comment, and might be able to find some more details on the plan.
Yeah.
Well, like when you showed us yesterday, the map, I saw the map, and you had everything red, green, or yellow. And really jumping out at you, like, okay, at least 80%, 75% is green, in really good shape or better. And then in the yellow, iffy, and then of course you had the red, and red being the priority. From that, because it's already walked and confirmed, I would just use that as a planning. Just those streets, to take another look at them, year 1, year 2, year 3, and ballpark, what do you think it might cost to fix them? Because they're all gonna be different, the areas.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
at least you kind of know, you have a big picture of it, and the map is a really great way to show it, I thought. So.
And we've pretty much talked through most of the infrastructure capital improvement plan. But for folks that are listening online, the front end looks at all the equipment and facilities, and it takes it, as Councilman Lewandowski mentioned, takes each asset and says, hey, if we've got one of them and it's worth $50,000 and it's got a 15-year lifespan, well, we know roughly in 15 years, we're gonna need the full value to replace that or do an overhaul on it.
Right.
And so what this plan does is each year sets aside that amount, that amount theoretically going into a checking account that we have in a bank check account that we have underneath our infrastructure fund called the I'm blanking on it right now. Recapitalization account, thank you. Where that money goes, and it's available once a vehicle gets to the end of its usable life.
Yeah.
If we're able to push a 10-year vehicle to 15 years, great. But if it does need, we're putting more into maintenance in the thing at 10 years than it is to buy new, we should have the money set aside to replace that particular piece of equipment. Same for air conditioners, sewer lift stations down at the park. We're trying to get all the big stuff that may go and make sure we're setting the money aside for it, instead of having to just come up with it in the year of
Right.
execution.
Exactly.
And then down in the second tier is road, sidewalk, stormwater, which are the basic functions of the city. And so we're programming out for, as we're talking about the paving analysis, we had ICE, Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering, go out and do a full walkthrough about a month and a half ago. The report's coming in, and if you look at it, we're in pretty good shape. We've got a couple of roads that are in what are considered poor condition. It's the right time to go in and mill and do an overlay on them. And if you look at the right amount of asphalt, has about a 20-year usable life before you're going to need to mill and overlay again. If you look at a 20-year life across our portfolio, we probably should be setting aside somewhere between $200,000 to $250,000 a year, and escalating that each year to make sure that we're ready to get the roads as they move from fair condition into poor condition and go and do that resurfacing. And same for sidewalk maintenance and construction, and then stormwater infrastructure repairs. And then at the bottom of the capital improvement plan, it basically looks at a 5-year projection. It takes all that you programmed out for that equipment and work on the infrastructure. It says you're going to spend this much a year, you have this much revenue coming in, and here's how much you have to carry out. The downside for the capital improvement plan as drafted right now, looking at fully funding what we need to be doing, and also staff support to the plan. That's another expenditure that we take the labor of staff and we move that back into the general fund where we cut our paychecks out of. That's about $500,000 a year to support this plan if we fully funded what we need. And so right now the income is, I'm trying to look at the revenue, we're probably about half of that. And so this plan shows that just in the first year you start to go where you don't have enough fully funded it. And so We've got to work towards getting about $500,000 of revenue coming into this account a year. I think there's some changes that we need to make. For example, there's some gas taxes that need to move that have been going into the general fund that's about $91,000 a year, need to be moved over and put into the infrastructure so that they're tied to roads, which is what they're restricted to in the first place. And so this fund, as we continue to work over the next couple of months to make sure it's refined, we're going to have to work on make some tough choices on, do we fully fund equipment replacements, or do we start to work our way towards that over multiple years? Do we fully fund all the road sidewalks, or do we have to work our way towards getting there as the revenue increases? So I don't think I have this is, like I said, my first 80% effort at building this capital improvement plan, but it does highlight where we have either some expenditure issues we've got to work on, or work on the revenue sources for this particular fund.
So this is an area of concern for me. We don't have close to the amount of money that we would need to make keep up with this. And so I think at the very top of this report, I'd like you to put in your approach. So for example, just to try to get us near what our expenditures are versus our income, a balanced budget, call it, I would say take the roadway resurfacing and cut it in half, just right off the top of the bat. But put that at the very top. This budget assumes only 50% funding of the needed roadway resurfacing and rehabilitation. Because at this point in time, I mean, we're going to be negative in just 2 years. We won't have any money to do any of this, assuming we don't get any other sources of income. When you add back in that gas tax that should be going toward roadways, that will definitely help us. Another thing you might say is equipment and facilities will only be funded at 90% of what we expect or what we think we need. And again, put that at the top. So anyone who looks at this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, knows what we did and how we did it. They could change it if they want. They can say, well, we're gonna do equipment and facilities at 80%, or we can do roadways at 60% instead of 50%. But they know why you did it and how it is reflected. Otherwise, if numbers show up here, they won't know exactly how those numbers were generated.
So it's kind of laying out worst case scenario in the beginning.
I guess you could say it that
So
way.
that you're being a little more, I mean, I get it, trying to estimate what it's actually gonna cost and trying to plan it. The worst, especially when we don't know what's coming, right? Or what other resources we're gonna have. Just trying to be more conservative on what we're thinking we might be able to spend.
And I would almost say be more realistic, because if we continue at this rate, I mean, in 2 years, we're already in negative numbers.
Yeah.
But we just can't do that. You can't plan for that kind of negativity.
So that'll help to clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, it'll at least call it. We've all heard about the insolvency of the Social Security and how that gets pushed out further and further because of different. Well, we're going to push this out. How we're going to become insolvent in infrastructure eventually, and then we continue to look at ways to make it more and more solvent as time goes on.
Well, maybe the best way to look at it is that difference. I don't have that sheet in front of me, but that difference where it keeps us positive, like that amount that makes it positive. Once you finally get to that amount, and just run the math on what is that percentage, and then remove that percentage from the items that are listed, just to see if it neutralizes it a little bit.
A straight line
Make it,
reduction.
just to make it a consistent, instead of you trying to, every single number doing a different percent or something. I just think from, because the end goal is to try to reach it to be a neutral number, not a negative number.
I think, and the other thing I mentioned, and I should have verbally talked about here, I think I mentioned to each of you, is also we're looking to, there's a line item in here for grants and other revenue. And so we're looking at what are all the opportunities out there based on our current rural municipality and a non-rural city designation. and also seeking very hard to get added onto the governor's declaration of a rural area of opportunity, adding Keystone Heights into the North Florida rural area of opportunity. That opens us up to multiple rural infrastructure fund grant applications or grant opportunities that the RAO, which is different, rural area of opportunity, allows us to request as being a member of. And so as an example, small town, probably a little bigger than us down there, Lake Okeechobee, $600,000 non-match grant from the state for road paving and resurfacing in 1 year. City of Keystone Heights doesn't need anywhere near that much. You know, we would really need maybe $250,000 in any given year to offset. Really, it's the road resurfacing. If you look at what really hits that account, the drugs negative, it's keeping our roads maintained. I think we've got a good argument under just a simple rural infrastructure fund grant application that we'll be working on for the next couple of weeks. And then potentially some of these other grants, if we can get onto the rural area of opportunity designation, we'll be in good shape. I acknowledge though, we have to be realistic, and without those grants, we can't expend at our full requirement, or we'll go, I don't know if insolvent's the right word, it'll go negative quick in these accounts.
So let me build on what you just said. The single most expensive item is the roadway resurfacing. Easily 10 times more than anything else. And so that can be, I think, addressed as a single line item, like 50% reduction right there. But then for all the rest of it, let's take a dart, throw it at the dartboard right now, and say whatever percentage we need. And we could say a balanced budget, but right now we've got $894,000 in our infrastructure fund. So we could be slightly over budgeting, meaning reducing this amount, and say take 95% of our expenses are covered by the current budget income. You see what I'm saying? Instead of a balanced budget, we say that our income is, I'll say, $950,000. We can spend $1 million. Find that number. It may be not 95,000, maybe whatever, 95%. Find that so we have a near balanced budget, but we're still taking a little bit of money out of our $894,000. And that way, it'll reduce over time, but not go negative right away. And so we're a near balanced budget, but not quite.
Because it can always be changed. I mean, as we go along.
And hopefully,
if we get grants, things like that, you can come back to it and inflate it again, bring it back up. But I think it's just, especially with everything going on right now, a lot of them.
I'll look at that 5-year plan, and just, I'm gonna speak this back to you maybe in a slightly different way, is look at the 5-year plan and make sure that at any point in the 5-year plan, the account doesn't go negative. And probably even better than that, at any point in the 5-year plan, the account does not break. Maybe it's that same 25% reserves that we talk about in the general fund as well. But I think that's really getting at what you're saying, which is figure out what we can expend. It may be more than we take in on an annual basis, but we don't want to do it to the point where we're making the account go negative and likely making it, driving it down so low that it's getting close to going negative.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I think we agree this is one, we're very glad we're looking at it, but this is one that worries us.
Yeah.
And so we need to get it under the microscope a little more.
Absolutely. The good thing is we're in June and we don't have to pass this thing in September. So we've got multiple months to take some iterations on this and clean it up.
Okay, so we covered the assets over 5,000, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And audit status is next.
So we just got confirmed from Powell & Jones. They continue to be positive that they will complete the audit by the 30th of June. What I would say is planning better next year. Completing the audit by 30 June does not necessarily mean that you get it submitted to the state on 30 June, because we need to brief the city council and get your approval for full submission. So, though I think we're in much better condition than last year, we expect the audit to be complete at the end of this month. I've asked them to come and present to the city on the 13th of July. I'm still waiting on that confirmation that they're available to come present the audit and their findings to you on the 13th of July. So I think we should, by the week after that, by the 20th of July or so, we should be fully submitted to the state this year.
Great. Big
So-
improvement.
Go ahead.
Big improvement.
Yeah, big improvement over last year, but of course we need to do better
Yeah.
next year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
We should be scheduling to brief y'all at the first June,
Mhm.
no later than the city council meeting in June, so that we're ready to go for submission by the 30th, or if not earlier. So I
And
agree.
this is a total city staff effort. Thank you to everybody. Wendy, Tiffany, yourself, everybody that's
Both, all you
contributed.
guys,
Yeah,
yeah.
both, everybody. Thank you.
Tiffany has been responding to they've asked for way more information, I think, than Reddish and White last year, so.
Well, Reddish and White knew about us. Mel and Jones were getting to know
They're kinda
us,
learning us, so.
they
Yeah.
need to know everything. Like, your firstborns.
It's a
What's
lot.
your middle
It's a lot.
initial?
I mean,
Lot of
yeah,
data.
Yeah.
what's your blood type?
Yeah.
What's your blood count?
We want another pint.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Alrighty, so next is our, item 10, long-term financial discussions per the property tax. Property
Mayor.
tax income, that's on your list next.
It is, I'm happy to flip that with, it's kind of intertwined with the 26-27 budget draft.
Okay. I'm
Chances
just
are,
looking
we're
at
gonna
the-
have that whole discussion all together as we talk the 26-27
Okay.
budget draft.
I was just looking at what was on
Really
the
up to
list.
y'all, I agree, we built the agenda that way.
Yeah,
I just think a natural flow, probably the best thing right now.
just go into the draft budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, okay. Alrighty, so we'll go on to the 2026-2027 draft budget, and there's, let's see, 4 line items here. Which one do you wanna go first?
So what we'll do is, so we've already talked, so of the line items, the attachments, you look at here, what the 3 additions are, the spreadsheet with the budget build,
Mhm.
and then the capital improvement plan for the CIP, and the CRA trust fund CIP. We've pretty much covered the capital improvement plan, the infrastructure fund capital improvement schedule. And so I think,
And the CRA trust one. we
the
covered.
CRA trust fund capital improvement plan pretty much mirrors that whole same discussion. The only difference is that it uses the categories that we established in the 2025 community redevelopment area plan.
Mhm.
And it then budgets those efforts against a 5-year plan, spreads them all out. Where Councilman Lewandowski accurately just expressed concerns about the infrastructure plan overexpending very quickly in the within the first 5 years. The CRA, what we've targeted in the plan, I think can be very easily spread out over the 5 years with the actions and the activities generally that we've identified.
Mhm.
And so that's what this one does, it spreads it out a little bit. If you look, it doesn't ever go negative. I think the lowest carry forward you see on that one goes down to $47,000 in 28-29, but then it actually goes back up. Now, granted, I don't have a whole lot programmed in 28-29 through 2031, but this one seems like with the funds coming in and what we've got in front of us, it'll stay solvent. We just gotta continue to watch it and clean it up over the next couple of months to make sure that it accurately reflects what the city council, the community redevelopment agency board, and the city council feels the priorities for the plan. I'll pause and see if y'all have any questions about this particular capital improvement plan. And I can also talk, let me talk through some of the changes here. If you look in the 25-26 projected, that is what we expect to actually expend this year. The first item is $17,000 at Beaman Beasley Lane. It says paving, What that actually was just millings and compaction. And so I don't necessarily know that a priority would be to get that paid, so I kind of just held the expenses at just doing that and leaving that particular project be. Going down a little further, you'll see the tennis courts came in at $118,500 to completely resurface the tennis courts. I've shifted the tennis, so what you'll see is a tennis basketball court lights at $40,000. I think that's achievable, at least get to awarded, it may not be fully constructed. Took those funds off of the Trailhead Phase 2 design. And then shifted Trailhead Phase 2 design over to 26-27. So you see a $40,000 expenditure there. Going back to 25-26 projected, Pocket Park, or real estate acquisition at $30,000. Talk about continuing to work on that. And then you just see standard costs at the bottom of auditing and staff and labor support at about $33,000 for the staff labor and legal support. And so that's this current year. In the next year, at 26-27, I shifted the parking. So I think by 26-27, we'll know if we received the grant to acquire the firehouse. If we know that we've got it, that's moving along well. Even if we know that we did get it, or if we know that we didn't get it, that'll allow us to make a decision on where we want to start expending design funds for additional parking in the city. If we do get the grant to acquire the firehouse, the volunteer fire department, we would apply, I would recommend we apply the design funds to using the back area, the grass area behind that area as a city parking lot. It's very close to downtown. It's probably about the closest we're going to get with city parking to the need in the downtown core. If we don't get the grant, I would recommend we look at Sylvan Way and look at doing design and extending our parking along Sylvan Way to add parking in the city. But regardless, I think we'll have the answer of where we need to go in 26-27. As I mentioned before, $40,000 to do the design work on Phase 2 for the trailhead. That would be bathrooms, a pavilion, and a playground in that grassy lot that's there by the parking area. The economic development area facade grants, so that would actually be re-engaging the facade grant program at $20,000 a year. And the infrastructure and facilities, Pocket Park, that would be the $10,000, I think, just to get design work done on a Pocket Park. I'll still need to talk to the engineering firms what we'll need for that. That's just a rough estimate. And then the museum and the visitor center, I moved the $155,000 that we had budgeted this year. I shifted it over to the 26-27 plan because once again, at that point, we'll know, did we get the firehouse that we're going to need to do overhaul work on to get in there, or are we going to need to go back and looking at potentially a prefabricated metal building in the old public works parking or public works area that's over off of Magnolia near the old firehouse. So I think we'll actually be at a decision point and have the right amount of information to make the call to move forward with which direction do we go with that project. And then the standard auditor and labor legal costs. If you look at this one, I think when I built this, you'll see the staff labor and legal support go up to $76,000. That was built out with the concept of moving our event planner into a grant writing format. And so in that concept, I split the salary costs or the labor costs, 50% towards the infrastructure fund, 50% towards the CRA, seeking grants in both areas, just as a rough estimate of what we would do with a grant writer. And so that would be the 26-27 plan tentatively that we need to talk about over the next couple of months, if that meets y'all's intent with what we want to do with the CRA. And then obviously we can talk in more detail about where we spread some of the other projects out in the future.
On the revenue side, are you going to go through that? Or?
Well, revenue stays pretty constant on that one. I'm trying to look at this one if it shows.
So is that showing the income for property taxes as they sit currently?
This one, so
26-27?
just as a reminder, in the CRA, I don't see significant changes, and so I just use roughly $230,000 as the income in the CRA.
Because there's only 3 homestead properties.
Correct.
3 homestead properties in the CRA.
So it almost doesn't change.
Okay.
'Cause. 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 that at the next CRA meeting, we have a discussion with the entire council about the pocket park and what the plan is there.
Yeah.
And then also, I would like to expand, if we could, the facade grants were one of the previous things that we did. But we also had grants for business signs along Lawrence. And not all the businesses took advantage of it. And so it kind of still rubs me wrong that we have a PVC pipe framed sign on one of our businesses here. And the owner said that they didn't know about the previous grant that was offered.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have taken advantage of it.
Yeah.
And so I would like to expand from just facade grants to also include the business signs.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't know what they have until it's shared, and I think there was a little bumpiness with the CRA funding over the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, because I know when I was in Heritage Commission, I partly knew what that fund was for. And so it started getting opened up again with some of the commissioners on that group, brought it back to the front and said, we need to spend this money. And that's when we did the first paint back in 2022. 2022 is when that was introduced. That's the first time I'd seen that grant money being really offered up
I think it was the last
those
time it was
businesses.
as well.
Yes, and I've been here since 2017. So the thing is, it was kind of tabled and not being pursued, I think. I'm not gonna blame anybody in particular on it, but once that activity started, then it's like, oh, we need to be spending this money, like on a regular basis. So now we know kind of what we got going on. I 100% agree with you on that, because I would like to see the level of consistency with it. Also, as he brought to my attention, that we should extend some of that facade grant money to the folks over on commercial that are part of the CRA space on the map, like that one little strip of shops right there. I know it goes to a county building, and then I think the last building, of course, is Brooklyn Boys, but I'm not worried about that. Just that one strip area right there, it's 4 or 5 businesses right there, which I'm sure they don't know anything about it either. Beyond, just like say, color match, paint stuff, offering to them, signs, like you said, to make it feel like it's a consistent flow. These are things I call putting a bow on it, right? And then also, when it goes into down the road, once the road is done, is this whole landscape plan that I see happening, hopefully with some trees up and down, benches, flowers, things that really make it finished look.
We've talked about for years putting a sidewalk on commercial.
Correct.
We've never done that.
Never done that, so it's something
So
else.
that
we'll
could be
get to.
another thing,
Because we want
right?
them to feel like they're part of it, because they are, you know, especially in their small business, all of them are. But, you know, I think anything we do with that is certainly a huge improvement. And even this, another strip of businesses down here where the Samantha's Tanning Place is, that's another area I think that didn't even get asked about the paint colors, as far as I know. Just the ones in the immediate downtown, but they are also in the CRA, that area. So, the more we can do with that, I think it adds more flavor, makes it feel more inviting. We just gotta make sure the business owners understand it. Maybe it's a way to do it, like do another Commerce and Coffee, have them all come together. And a lot of them don't own that building, we just have to find out who does own that building and present that to them, which like we did with Miss Nelson.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like absolutely keep adding to it, what we wanna do to make it, you know,
Right,
what our goals are.
so the action here would be at the next CRA meeting, add these 2 items to the agenda
For discussion.
for the whole council
Everybody
to
hear about
discuss.
it.
For us to share our thoughts
Yeah.
about that.
And I'm pretty sure they're all on board with that.
Council, just to clarify your thought, which is more of a, make sure if we're drafting the facade grant program, that it also, it's not just paint color schemes, that it is, you can use it for signage.
Yes.
You could use it theoretically for landscaping changes.
Right.
You could use it theoretically for, one of the other areas, and we could get feedback, Councilman, is, what's the other, screening. So like a screening, so if you look on the back of the barber shop building, they did a bunch of screening where the industrial back area is screened off by a little picket
High
fence kind of
vis.
thing and all that, that's painted.
Yeah.
You know, hide the dumpster,
Dumpsters.
that kind of stuff.
And it, yeah, it looks, it's definitely different than this, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We just need to make sure that the facade grant program is all encompassing of what the city council sees as
Yeah.
facilitating a look of Keystone of the businesses that give.
Eliminating blight.
Yeah, it just makes us feel so nice to see him walk around. So we've met a guy he's Clay County, but he's something with trees and stuff, so he's offering us, it's a bunch of trees, like as many as 80 trees or something if we want them, whenever we get ready to do that. Like, let's say trees are easy to maintain in the future, like it used to be back in the 20s, how there was a tree line road there.
Right, we have a balancing act with trees though, because they block the lights at night. And so you gotta be careful.
Yeah,
Don't put too
these
many
would be
trees.
things like shrub-like trees, probably not very
Okay.
tall, not very
Yeah.
big, just to
That would
add a
be
little
great.
bit of charm to it.
It is-
And I've seen them in all different cities.
I've looked at
You
that
can
exact
do
same
twinkle lights
thing.
in them and stuff.
You put great myrtles in that area, you're actually, they start to block the signs of the businesses, so there's a tough balancing act there to get the right height.
You just
of
have to get a
shade.
certain type of tree that will do that.
Before I forget again, and this is maybe for Bo, maybe than anyone else, but, yesterday I was actually walking home from our meeting, and I hear this BAM! And,
Did you cause that accident over there?
Yeah. No, I was walking in front of the
That's why
park,
that was all blocked.
Yeah.
but no,
Well, because I was coming right behind you, yeah, so I had to go
no,
back.
this truck, and it was a taller truck, it was coming from downtown and heading toward Melrose, and it had a flat front on the back side of it, and it hit a tree branch
Mhm.
that was hanging low
Oh.
over the roadway, and that's what caused the BAM.
Oh, wow.
And so then I looked up. Not only was the tree branch hanging low, but it was being propped up by a power line. The tree branch was leaning on the power line and it looks like it broke, and would have even been lower had the power line not caught it. And it's our responsibility, of course, to keep that roadway clear.
Yeah, 12 feet in height. yeah.
Right, and so I would ask Bo or whoever in Public Works to go look. It's right across from where the bathroom is in the
Oh, I know
park
what you're talking
there.
about, right before that house.
Right before the house, and it's only low on the southbound toward Melrose side.
It's in that same general area where that water truck flipped on that
Yes,
corner.
yes, right in that same
And it's a
area.
really cool looking tree
Right.
that
That one specific area has been taken care of, it got taken care of yesterday.
Got taken care of yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, so it must have been late yesterday, cause I walked back there about 2:30.
It was a little after 3.
Okay.
I got a call from Ryan Julius, and he was taking care of it through Clay Electric, so.
Okay,
oh, great.
all right, thank you,
Okay.
wow,
But
awesome.
the
Yeah,
further-
because the traffic freed up, like.
The further
when
discussion
I was
is
getting
looking at the
delivered.
rest of it to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be.
Excellent, okay, problem solved,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think I've got your guidance on the CRA. Any other comments for today?
No, and to agree
so-
with what you said, to share with council at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think
And
for
if
the
any
CRA.
suggestions they might have.
Right, the other discussion I thought we should have for today, and I looked at what I appreciate all your work. This took you a lot of time to put together this, budget for next year and include potential homestead impacts,
Mhm.
all of that stuff. And I thought you and I should have this discussion, about guidance. And that is, right now, we have a budget that has, 1.56, call it income, but without the homestead passing, we have 1.75 in expenses. So we have roughly 200,000 more in expenses than we do in income. And of course, we have less income if the homestead exemption thing passes. And I'm not quite sure, maybe you can tell me why our income only drops by 13,000, not the 120,000, 119,000 that we're getting less.
Oh, income?
Yeah,
Sorry, let me
income.
go to that line. So
What are we getting plussed up in income?
So what happens is when I make the plan for property tax change, what I do in most of that plan, I go after all, as I told you in the city council meeting last time, I go after all events.
But that's the expense side.
Right,
Income
correct.
side,
Well,
I'm not-
wait with me here, because it takes a little bit of a story, I hate to say it. So if you cut all your events, that's an expense reduction. You also have labor. And so what that labor comes out, and I tell you, I take the event director and I move that position to a grant writer. So what happens is when you move that to a grant writer and you charge 50% to the CRA and 50% to the infrastructure account, effectively the way you do that is make those two accounts push the labor cost from the account back to revenue in the income side or the revenue side of the general fund. And so
Shouldn't it affect only expenses?
well, it drops the expenses, it drops the 50, the general fund would have been paying that, let's just say it's round out and say $50,000. It's not that exact number, but let's say it's $50,000. Right now, it's just an expense. But when you drop that expense off and you take that full-time equivalent and you charge it against those two accounts now, which we're not pushing labor refund for that particular position into the income side, which we have all that, when I say staff support costs, that comes back into the revenue of the general fund. There's an area, hold on, let me give you a number to walk in on it. It's on the second page up at the top, internal service reimbursement, 382000. You'll see cemetery reimbursement, CRA reimbursement, CIP reimbursement. So let's look at a CRA reimbursement general fund. And so before property tax, you're seeing $25,000 in the fiscal year 26-27 budget. But if you look in the property tax one, I've taken 50% of the grant writer now in there. So that's $24,000, $25,000 extra goes into that revenue source. And so you do have a reduction in income, but there's other ways that I looked at utilizing the other accounts to make sure that they're pushing more income back into the general fund, if that makes sense. So it's a little weird to try and track what happens. It's not just a revenue loss that you can see. Because I did some other moves, there's refunds that come in for labor from the other two accounts that bring that up. And then I also did, we also looked at, when I did this plan, if you look at the cemetery as an example, we were only charging $1,000 for a plot in the cemetery 2 years ago. Y'all authorized to move that to $2,000. The closest, lowest cost cemetery plot in the area is $3,000. So we're still not at an equivalent rate in the other areas. And so one of the other changes I made, it may not exactly be correct, but I said, hey, we've got, Debbie, I'll just say Debbie provides support to the cemetery. Matt's out there mowing and doing day-to-day stuff. She's been helping out administratively with the facility. Right now, I haven't been back charging the cemetery for it, but I think we need to. And so there's another area where I looked at, if you look at the cost, I ran a projection and said maybe we bring the plot cost up to $2,500, and that creates room, if you look at an average annual sales, to offset that labor support that we've been providing. So that's another area where the cemetery fund, we would increase revenue by getting it closer to what a proper charge would be compared to other facilities. We increase the revenue, but we also increase the labor charging of the current staff against that. That also comes back in as additional revenue into the revenue side of the general fund. So like I said, there's a couple of things I did to try and be smart with how we're operating that only shows in the post property tax transition. We may even need to do that without the property tax transition, so.
I kind of like that idea right now. I'd like to bring that in front of the council next time. let's approve that. So my general discussion though is our approach. And, what I mean by that is that there is a $200,000 difference of overspending right now. We do not have a balanced budget for next year. Even if the ballot issue does not pass, we still have $200,000 more in expenses than we do in income. And so therefore, I want to float the idea that we ask the city manager to come up with a balanced budget. That our income matches our expenses. And figure out what has to happen for that $200,000 expense to go away. Or is there some other source of income that we need to pursue that we haven't yet? I don't want to tell him how to do his job, but I'm more interested in a balanced budget, or at least closer to being balanced. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that, you're right, we want to have it as close as possible. I like the idea that, we're able to see the two columns with Homestead coming in, and you've already done all the analysis on the properties impacted and the ones that are not. And, clearly we're gonna lose a couple $100,000, from what I can understand.
In that area,
Essentially,
yes, ma'am.
right at it, right?
Yeah, it's
180, 190, yeah.
119,000.
Yeah, so, it's, I personally have no doubt it's gonna go through. I know the other, cities I'm talking to, and the mayors are planning that it is gonna happen. And that's how they're working their budget and preparing for that. And even if it didn't go through, you'd still be good because, you just have that amount of money left over. But right now, everything I'm hearing, including from Florida League of Cities, overall, had a big call with mayors last week. I'm sure I'll hear more, but they're all planning as if it's actually gonna happen. Cause you just spin your wheels doing, okay, is it gonna not, is it gonna happen or is it not? Cause we're in the middle of budget, everybody's in the middle of budget situation. And we're just trying to be, careful to not, like you say, over budget money that we're not gonna have. So, but you're talking about for the current budget as if the homestead didn't happen.
Yeah, so here's the way I kind of look at it, is if the budget, if the property tax does not pass, we're still $200,000 overspending.
Yeah.
If that does pass, we're now $319,000 overspending.
Right.
And to me, that is, when we only have income of 1.56 million, we're talking about 33% of our budget over, not 33%, 300 out of 15 is 20%. 20% or so overspending. And to me, that is too much. That is just too much. So if we shoot for a balanced budget, 156 in income, or 1.56, I should say, 1.56 in expenses, and the ballot measure passes, now we are roughly, call it 119,000 over budget. And that to me, which is only 7 or 8% of our budget, is much more manageable than 20% of our budget.
So if you cut through there, Jamie, what is there to cut? I mean, it's a pretty good chunk.
So if you go to, so I brought, and I put on your desk this,
Yeah.
it looks like this, but it's got the charts in there. I'll skip the revenue because we've kind of discussed that. Really, I think what we're talking about is expenses. And in the last meeting, you all asked about non-discretionary and discretionary. And if you I don't know, you can grab that copy right over there off the chair if you want to look at it. And so at the very top of this, and this is this document is also published online. We just got this one up published this morning. When you that? So it's published online as well with the agenda. And so it's the third page on the Word document. And the upper, let's go upper left, festivals and events is what I would call fully discretionary. And so this $137,000 or 8% of the budget are expenses. It's 8% of total expenses, let me be clear. That I think is fully discretionary. And that is the expenses of our events director, so our labor for events director, and any additional staff support. We have a couple of folks that come in and help her out on an hourly basis at the event, the cost of the event, and then the cost of law enforcement support of those events. And that's what that number represents. I would recommend that is fully discretionary, and I think I said it last time, I'll be the Grinch that stole the events, but that would be a full cut. Parks and Recreation comes in at 30%, $50,000. There's a little bit of discretionary in there that you'll see in my proposed draft. Community support is fully discretionary. It shows here $18,000. I gotta go double check. I think that's $10,000 that goes to the Lakes account. And I think I may have missed, I had budgeted in the budget, I budgeted $15,000 in support to Friends of Keystone Heights, just as a general number. It wasn't any specific guidance from the council, but it was a little bit reduced from what we did last year when it was the Centennial. And you'll see it on the Centennial budget line. And so, and also in here is the $2,500 that we told Kiwanis that we do to support the flag of the colors of the boulevard. And so I think all of those are discretionary and can be reduced. Not great, but I think they're all good things to do in the budgeting that we're dealing with now, likely not. Transfers to other funds, this is that $100,000 that goes to the CRA from the property tax in the main account. The general fund, that's non-discretionary. The next one down is kind of like a purple, pink, whatever that is, called purple. Government operating expenses, $248,500. So that's everything that it takes to run City Hall effectively. So that's the copy paper, that's whatever work we do in here for audio visual. There is some discretionary that's in here in particular, and I put this as a little bit of discretionary, but there are, as I mentioned in the city council meeting, our memberships in the Chamber of Commerce, our memberships in the North Florida Economic Development Corporation. Those sorts of memberships I would recommend we curtail. I think the only types of memberships we look at are memberships that drive a financial benefit to the city in the long term. So I think there's probably $10,000 to $15,000 in reductions there. Government personnel services, this is $664,000. So this is all of our labor other than the events director sit in this account. All of our fringe benefits, so health insurance, life insurance, the dental coverage that we have for retirement, federal Florida retirement system, and then labor is in this chunk of funds. And so that's, that would be up for discussion, city council and guidance. You're looking at, and the other thing that's built into this is I built the next budget, as I did last year, I built in a roughly 3% cost of living increase into the cost of our labor. That would be adjusted. We just look as we transition into October what the actual CPI is. We tie it to CPI just like we do with the city council income or the salaries that y'all get. But just as a budgeting function, I did a 3% there to cover it, and then also did 2% for performance bonuses as needed. And so across all of those functions, I need guidance from city council on what they see as possible for reductions there, any guidance they want to give. I'll keep wrapping around government, that little thin blue, dark blue, government personnel services contingency. This $20,000 is effectively the city manager contingency for my travel to Tallahassee or conferences, and then the other $10,000 is budgeted for city council members, predominantly go into the Florida League of Cities conference once a year. So that is discretionary. I think the only thing in here that's non-discretionary would be about $1,000 of that, which is a requirement against my contract to maintain my membership in Florida City Council Managers Association and the International City Council members. I'm not fired up either way. If y'all tell me I want to waive that portion of the contract, I'm not shedding tears. But that would be about the only thing that's non-discretionary. Government legal, so that's what we pay for our legal fees. That's non-discretionary. Moving up to about the 9 o'clock position, government comprehensive planning. That's $40,000 budgeted next year for Janice Fleet to support us. The follow-on to comprehensive planning is an update to the land development regulations. You have to do that after you get your comprehensive plan. That's labor support to get that done. We've got a grant request in for that, but I consider that non-discretionary. Cemetery, that's just cemetery manager, labor support, non-discretionary. The upper purple one, public safety, that's $41,000. That's a portion of an FTE, about $20,000 that we finance to do code enforcement labor. And then the other $20,000 is cutting down trees that may be hanging a little too low over the roads, and some other safety issues like our ADT contract that monitors City Hall and Public Works. And there's a couple other small things that are in there. I think we were paying for, they had been paying for cell phones out of that. I've moved that to the general fund, I've moved that into general government operating expenses. So I think there's very limited non-discretionary in that one, though I trimmed back how much, no pun intended, I cut back how much we were allocating for tree removal. So City of Keystone Heights has got a lot of old oak trees,
Right.
as you can see with down limbs. And then the last area, as you wrap up back up the top, is transportation. That's $309,000, and that is everything it takes to run Public Works predominantly. The only thing that's not factored into that amount is $20,000 in Parks and Recreation labor that we have in the budget. But that transportation is basically everything we do to keep the roads, the maintenance work that we do to keep the roads and keep everything fixed. There's very little non-discretionary, though you'll see when I went into that area in the budget, I did reduce the amount that we had allocated for some mower and vehicle maintenance and some of the contingency funds for operating, just general operating expenses for the Public Works building. So we trimmed that back a lot, but it's maybe $5,000, $10,000 savings in there. So that's a kind of a full summary of where I see what that exact number looks like. Some of that shows in blue. Some of those reductions I talked about show in blue on the draft spreadsheet for the I call it the homestead line of the budget. Some don't, but every time I sit down and look at that, I think of new ways to be creative with the budget. I forget when I snap the chalk line for the document that I sent y'all. I'll pause.
Well, I greatly appreciate the pie chart, because these are a lot of numbers, and kind of bringing it all into the big picture just kind of gives us a real good idea on the chunks and that we have. And I appreciate all the explanation. And I know that our personnel is a large chunk of it. It should be based on the 60-40 rule. It should be at least 40% of your budget. It goes to staffing. I'm very passionate and committed to our staffing. We've been doing really great in the last 24 months trying to keep staffing here due to a variety of reasons. They weren't getting paid enough salary. They didn't have benefits, not all benefits. It became kind of revolving door. And I feel that staffing is probably one of our largest assets that we have, because if we don't have the staff, we don't have the city. The city just sits and nothing happens, because it's not us, it's all of you guys. And I feel like we have to continue to invest in our teams to ensure that they want to stay here and make this a career. And again, the value of our staff members, especially when they've been here for a while, is all of that training and knowledge. And you put all that effort in and they go out the door. Think about the money involved with that. Very rarely would you monetize that, but there is a money component to that. So for longer longevity and career growth and future, I just feel like we have to continue supporting them as it is. I know you have concerns about holiday time. I haven't looked into what the average holidays are for state employees, which I will do. I haven't done that yet. But I still feel that for the most part, we need to continue the salaries and the benefits that we're offering to them, including the retirement benefits. Because I think that also helps to ensure longevity. Just my position on it.
So let's talk about the budgeting real quick. I'm gonna refer to the second page of your actual budget, where we start to talk about the expenses. So starting here with expenses. That first section where there's the blue reductions, if you add those up, that is approximately an $84,000 savings. The second blue one, that's a $17,000 savings for equipment maintenance. And the third and final blue section there is about $17,500. And so if you add these three up, that gets us to $119,000, which is exactly what will be lost in our best estimates if the ballot measure passes. So for me, this is the draft blueprint of what we lose exactly if the ballot measure passes.
Right.
The second question though is if we balance our budget to go from 1.77 million to 1.56 million, how do we do that? And the easiest way to do this, and this is the way I did all the time in the government, was we just said that's an 11% reduction. Just do the math. And then just across all expenses, say, do me a budget with 11% less and everything.
Let's see what that looks like.
Yeah. And that gets us to our balanced budget, regardless of what happens to the ballot measure. I just throw that out as a beginning point. Do we really want to do a balanced budget? That's my question. And then the second part is, how do we give him guidance to do that? What do you think?
So I understand the whole thing about the balanced budget, but once we would do that, say take 11% from each category across the board to come up with whatever that number winds up to make it balanced, and that's for the current budget, that's without the Homestead Act. But then you've already looked at it for what the Homestead Act reflects, right? The impact of that. Still kind of around that $100,000. Or it's
Yeah,
really
it doesn't-
200,000 total, because there was a difference of the 1.5 versus the 1.7. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is, aren't they kind of two of the same in a way? I mean, maybe take a look at what 11% looks at across all things for current, and see how close does that come with the Homestead numbers, right?
I think that mixes two separate issues.
Gets it?
It mingles them. One issue is, do we want a balanced budget? Which is completely separate in my mind from the ballot measure and the impacts of the ballot measure. Okay, and so, and there is an additional item here, and that is what is our millage rate. And so I believe you've done this based upon a rollback millage rate. So if we set a millage rate that's slightly higher than that, we'll actually have a little bit more money
Which I agree with.
to put into the budget. So that's a third variable here, but that works in our favor, and I kind of don't want to mess with that right now because I don't know how that's going to go. But I'd like to look at them as separate. First, do we want a balanced budget, and address that separately from the ballot measure?
Well, maybe we take a look at the 11% per category, apply that and see what, just don't do like a ton of work on it, but just the round number, apply it, see what it looks like, and come back so we get ready to meet again in July, or whenever we meet again. And just see what that looks like, and if it's a doable thing. I don't know if it is or not. There could be in some areas, maybe it becomes, instead of 11, it's 22 or 15%. But the whole average would equal to 11% reduction, like you said.
Right, and
Because some areas you won't be able to take it from.
my preference will be that pain is shared equally. So for example, the council we'll have our salary reduced.
Yeah.
We'll have
Yeah,
our
I'm-
conference amount reduced.
I'm totally fine with that. I wouldn't mind my whole salary went away, honestly. I mean, that's just my personal feelings
Yeah.
about it.
But we have.
But that's only a small chunk of money.
Yeah, so
It's not
little.
even big enough to
But,
impact.
but what I'm saying is that everybody shares the pain.
Yeah,
And you're right, I think, for example, the electricity bill, to keep this place open, unless we do something, and this is an option, there are many options, I will leave it up to you to figure out what the best. But to say, okay, we're only gonna be open 4.5 days a week. And we're gonna take salary and make that appropriate, and everyone gets half a day off on Friday, and this building's gonna be shut down half a day on Friday, and we're just gonna do less with less money. And in that case, we might have a small electrical savings, a small fuel savings, because we're just not working.
yeah.
But those are fixed costs, like you said, or alluded to, that otherwise might not change at all.
Right. What are your thoughts, Jamie?
I think I can build a course of action that shows what that looks like. I can see, as you go through you'll see areas like you called out where, there's just certain areas where you're not gonna be able to do the 11%.
Yeah.
But I can go through and do the analysis and see what it is.
Just think some might be a little more
And
than
just
11.
see what it
To get it
does.
as close as possible,
Mhm.
say within 50,000 or less.
So we are kind of saying, yes, a balanced budget, okay.
Yeah.
And if it's not exactly balanced, that's okay,
Yeah.
but get it more than $200,000 off, right, or 11% off.
Yeah, it's getting close to half a year.
Yeah,
Or more than
11%.
half a year, actually, yeah. Okay, I mean, I don't want you to put a ton of work in it, because you've already put so much work
Yeah.
into it. You have so much great data here, I mean, it's amazing. But like I say, looking at these buckets and just going after the big ones, and like you said, turns out we have to figure out closing down 1 day a week. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it costs a lot to run with folks and everything here, just trying to figure out creatively what we can do to get it a little closer. It may not have to do that at all, depending on what comes next in November, so it just depends, it may have to even be worse, who knows?
And it may be taking a major project and just not doing it.
Right,
If we have a $200,000 project,
we just
okay,
take it out,
we just take it out, and then we got a balanced budget.
right.
Boom.
And that might be something to look at to begin, something that's a low not as big a priority kind of thing.
Broadly, the issue is the general fund, right? I mean, obviously, we
Yes.
talked about infrastructure.
Oh, the
You're
general
right.
fund.
We can not do infrastructure projects and balance the infrastructure account. It's really income into the general fund.
Yes.
And so I get what you're saying. You're saying balance the general fund. Obviously, the other funds need to balance as well
Yeah.
with what we can and cannot do, but really it's balancing the general fund. And what are the opportunities there? I'll look at a course of action that just lays, like we said, I'll double check it, whatever that reduction is, 11,000 or 11%. And then I can also look at other different courses of action. I think for sure, the one that we do know is I think what I'm getting is go ahead and build a budget that cuts events. Or do you want it with leaving events and cutting 10% and cutting 11%?
So right now, I would leave all the events
Okay.
for the balanced budget.
Mhm.
Just cut 11% from festivals, just like everything else.
Mhm.
All right, and then if we have to go to the ballot measure, now festivals go.
Okay.
They're gone completely.
And when you ran your number for 11%, did that factor in the loss of reduction of property tax?
No.
Okay. So what you're saying is, I appreciate this because I'm trying to clarify the guidance, which is build a fiscal year 26-27 budget that balances, assuming standard expected revenue without the property tax change.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Got it.
already put a lot of work on the property tax thing.
Mhm.
I think we pretty much know what's gonna happen there. And then, like I said, just look for that number, getting it closer to, where we need to be.
Well, I'll keep refining the gross property tax budget.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm keeping that in the pocket, because,
yeah, no, I
we're already
absolutely
in
should.
questions on what does that mean, so.
Right.
Okay.
So, general comment. All of your work, all of your data, these kind of pie charts, these are wonderful assets for us in decision making. These are wonderful decision tools. And so I want to say that I appreciate all of your work to do this kind of stuff. It helps us make very informed quality decisions. And it may go so far as, and this is another bit of data that if you have time, I know you're so busy, and I even hate to bring it up because it's more work, but if you have time to say, what millage rate would we have to have in order to replace the ballot measure?
I already thought about that some.
Okay, great minds think alike, as they say,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And so we could say to our people, all right, you with the homestead exemptions, you're gonna get a tax break. But all the businesses and all the people who don't get homestead exemptions, you're gonna pick up the load now. That's basically what we're saying. And we're gonna continue as a city the way we've always continued. Are you as citizens and businesses, are you okay with that? Because it could be a hefty increase in the millage rate. But it's another option we have.
Here's the, I hear exactly what you're saying. Yes, I can come up with that number. The problem conceptually is, with the ballot initiative as proposed, property tax income becomes restricted. And it comes other than, it calls it, there's a word, Mayor, you said it yesterday, I just forgot what they say. But basically they say that it's restricted to core or critical uses.
Core and
functions.
infrastructure.
Yeah, it calls it core functions or
Core
something like that.
functions
And then it
and
further
infrastructure.
defines it as infrastructure, retirement, public safety, and some other things.
Right.
For the city of Keystone Heights, what that effectively means is, if the ballot initiative passes, any revenue that continues to come in from property taxes can only be used to pay our Florida Retirement Services costs, and then maybe, if I look at it and find a definition, what we consider public safety, which is our code enforcement and cutting trees down. Broadly. The rest of that money does not go into the trust for the general fund anymore. It effectively goes to the infrastructure account and funds infrastructure projects. And so I say that to say, when you ask me to tell you what the millage rate is to offset that impact, I can tell you to offset the dollars. I can't tell you actually what is to offset the impact of the general fund, because those funds can no longer be used.
Understood.
In the general fund.
Understood, but as you know from our income, we do have some sources that we could use which are unrestricted, like franchise fees,
Correct.
state shared sales tax. And so those could be used to fund festivals and the.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering,
The property tax
is once we,
purposes.
if we increase the mill rate and it brings us 50,000 a year extra, or 75 even. And I know it has restrictions, I think it was just two little buckets that, based on the way it's written, it's not gonna be as flexible as it was before.
Right.
In other words, it can't be used for the CRA, like us doing, like the corner, stuff like that. So like you say, if it was another buckets of money, maybe we can pull from those to put toward a festival or toward a project downtown, acquisition property, things like that. In other words, spread the money from different buckets than we would normally do.
Right, we're just careful.
Because of the limitations, but if we can fill those buckets with something from the mill rate increase, which I think we have no choice but to do this time. I just don't think, because of the deficit that we're gonna feel. Because the state has no other opportunities for us really to look at where we're gonna get funding. I mean, they say fill out a grant, but all those have restrictions. So, to me, that's not the answer. Unfortunately, it's not the answer. I mean, we need to be doing the grants anyway, but, in the big picture, for us to count on that as to be in our income to operate and to be the Keystone Heights that we wanna be, I think it's a joke. So, we don't have another choice. That's the only area that we can control at any level. It's all being pushed to the state to control it. Even the county can't control what's happening.
The revenues are all restricted. I mean, many of our revenues, or a big chunk of our unrestricted revenue now becomes restricted revenue.
Correct.
And that changes our decision cycles.
Yep.
I don't want you to go into that detail though right now, it's just a general idea.
I do have a section to talk about millage,
Okay.
if you want to, because I think regardless of all that, we've got to choose what our maximum millage rate is before when we had to report it on the 4th of August.
Okay.
So in that same document, I think it's now it's after the pie chart, so 1, 2, 3, it's on the 4th page, labeled millage. We received our updated taxable property value from the property appraiser. It's a draft. We received it at the beginning of the month. And it is now $108 million, roughly. I rounded it to the nearest thousand, I believe. $108 million. And so that represents about a $3 million increase, or about 3% increase over last year. And so we are seeing the market flattening out. So if you look at what I did on here was show the 3 previous millage rates the city set. I believe in fiscal year 23-24, the rate had been 4.2901, and in 23-24, the rate was set at 3.8847, and then the current rate, which we set for this fiscal year, 3.6073. So if you look at the dollar values, they're out to the side of each of those. If we look at the current taxable value that we're going to budget for the fiscal year 26-27 at $108 million, the current rate would generate $391,000 rounded, or $371,000 when you calculate it at 95%. So that's what we actually put in the budget line. We take what's generated by the taxable value, assume that we're actually going to receive 90% of it, and that's what we put in our budget line. The rollback rate, to keep the same amount coming in next year as what we received in this year, is 3.5039. And that would bring in the same amount this year that we're receiving this year, a total of $380,000, or if you do the 95%, $360,000 is what we actually budgeted for. So the rough estimate of our rollback rate, 3.5039, if we keep the current rate, it would generate about $11,000 more at $391,000. And then you can see some examples of, if you set higher rates, how much those would bring in. My recommendation right now, after looking at that 2011 city policy on how we budget, it gave guidance that said the city should set the rate somewhere between the rollback rate, or no more, on an annual basis, no more than a 10% revenue increase from the rollback rate. So when you calculate that number, I've already given you the rollback rate, the amount that comes in, that 10% increase would be roughly a $38,000 revenue increase, and that would roughly be about a 3.8543 millage rate. And so my recommendation to you today is what we should talk about the millage rate at the next city council meeting, but I'll be looking for guidance as what we set at the maximum millage rate. What's the highest we're going to set our rate, so that when we go into the budgeting process, we can have that discussion and make a final decision in September. But due to the truth at millage process, no later than the 4th of August, I've got to go into an online system and set the highest rate, the maximum millage rate. Right now, my recommendation is to set that at 3.8543, or roughly, we'll get a refined property value on the 1st of July. That might change that number by a decimal point or so.
So is this 3.8543, is that 5% above our current 3.0? Is that the number, or?
That 3.8543 would bring in 10% more revenue than the current fiscal year.
The allowable thing based on the.
That's not the maximum.
That's what I
Yes,
said.
so let me be clear. That number is not the maximum
Okay.
millage. That number looks at our city fiscal policy passed 2012 and calculates 10% revenue increase. The maximum millage of 10% that the city can levy, I'd have to go back and calculate it.
Okay.
And we may not even be able to set that. There's some thresholds that you can do only so much a year.
Yeah, and I wasn't even thinking along those
At
terms.
the state level.
To me, and Dan, tell me what you think, in looking at our history on the mill rates and comparing us to everybody else in the county, we stayed at 4.2901 for more than 6 years. I think this reference, which is on the property tax page, Clay County, you can access this and print it, showing everything from last year to all the way back to 2016. And in those 6 years, during that time, we ran at 4.2901. And then last year, of course, like you said, it was at 3 point, good, I know it's right here too, just looking at mine.
3.8847.
Yeah, so it was 3 point,
3.8847.
yeah, 3.8847 was, no, that was,
That's last
that's
year.
the year before. It was at 3.6.
That's this year.
Oh,
current year.
73, that's
That's
what the
this
last one
current
was that we
year.
voted on in
Right.
July of last year.
Right, but it's for this current year.
That's correct. So when we go to set it for the next round, we're going based off of that 3.6, which way do we go? And I see you've got this 3.8 here. When you talk about the high number, to me personally, I'd be comfortable with putting it at the 4.2901. I don't know what you think about that, meaning we can't go over that number. But with the idea that this homestead thing's happening.
Yeah. So when I did my analysis a couple years ago, at 4.29, compared to other cities of our size, not what was in our county here, we were slightly above average. I think the average was like 4.23. And what I did was I took the 30 cities of our size, 15 above and 15 below, and I said, what was their millage rates? And the average millage rate, I think, was around like 4.23. And so we weren't far off.
Right.
And I looked at our budget surplus and what the recommended surplus was to have, and we had way above what we needed.
Right,
And so that was the logic to bring it down.
yeah.
Now we have different things in play, especially with the budget measure, the budget ballot measure having to do with hometown exemption, homestead exemptions. And because of that change, I am now in support of a higher millage rate. It shifts who pays property tax. It shifts it from the homestead exemption people in our city to the businesses and to the non-homestead properties in our city. And I am okay with that. The question is, how high should it go? I'd like to stay within our budget policy that we have with the city. And so I like our city manager's recommendation. I would say 3.86 is close enough. And so that's what I would recommend.
Right.
I understand your logic here, and I can support that too, but that violates our own policy in the city. And so if we were to do that, I would request that we change the policy in the city. I want us to follow our own guidance. And so what I would ask you to look at, what, instead of an increase of 10%, what would the kind of increase be? Would that be 20%? Would that be 30%?
So the 3.8, Jamie, is that with the full-on guidance out of here? Isn't that the max that we could do? I thought it was only a certain.
Yes,
percent.
ma'am. That's
Oh, okay.
my calculation.
I misunderstood.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
gotcha.
3.8543 would be matching the
Okay.
max of the high end
At
of
the
what
high
the
end,
policy
okay,
says. Yes, ma'am.
gotcha. I didn't realize that. So, yes, I agree, and I think maybe we should look at changing it
Changing the policy?
Yeah.
Okay.
to reflect today.
And just to be clear too, the state legal maximum is a millage rate of 10.0000.
Correct.
So we are,
We're way.
we're at 38% of the maximum.
Yeah.
City of Palaca is at 10.
I know, they were. I know.
But it's really hurt their economy.
Yeah,
Businesses don't wanna move inside the city limits because they have to pay so much in property
Right,
taxes.
right.
And
What'd you say, we're number 17 in the state of Florida for the lowest?
When I went through the numbers, I was trying to remember, Mayor, I recall when we were talking, we were the 17th, but I could be wrong with that. We may have been 17th.
Yeah.
I gotta go back and look. I went
There's
through
yeah,
a
there's a nice
400
reference.
village rates,
Yeah.
probably the same thing you did,
Yeah,
Councilman.
there's a nice
Um,
reference.
And I think it's important to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges.
Correct.
You know, you can't
Sorry.
compare Paris to Jacksonville or
Well, and you know, when I look at this, you know, so we're looking at Penny Farms here, which is, I'm sure they have less than 1,000 residents,
Oh.
right?
They're at 600 or something.
And they're at 4.45. So, you know.
The other thing that you gotta look at is, do the municipalities run their own police department? Do the municipalities run their own sewer
And
and
that's
water?
the Green
Penny
Cove
Farms
and Orange
maintains a
Farms do.
water system,
Correct.
and they have a sewer system as
Yeah.
well they maintain.
So last Thursday, when we were at the Florida League of Cities dinner, we talked to Tom, who's one of the council members of Penny Farms.
Yes.
And he said because they have almost no businesses inside the city limits, because almost all of their properties are homestead properties.
Yeah, boy, they're really moving.
They're looking at losing 60% of their budget.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Oh my goodness, I feel for those people.
Yeah, I mean, that whole thing, I mean, and I was mentioning this to you yesterday, Jamie, is the sad part about the whole idea of this proposal, that is, you know, obviously gonna go through, but is everybody's created as the same, and we're not. And it takes it out of our home rule control. And we do everything to personalize our community, our size, our citizens' needs. Like you said, we're not Jacksonville, we're not St. Augustine, we're not Penny Farms. But we're trying to, you know, balance what those needs are, and we've worked real hard to cover what those needs are. And I think we've done a great job at addressing those things. But unfortunately, we're being put in the same bucket as a Jacksonville or Miami or whatever. And yeah, they're getting hit bigger, but they have bigger pots, and they also have other resources that we have no opportunity to acquire. And so that part of it's the part that I'm very unhappy about, the lack of personalization in this vote, in this perspective, like this bill. In the small towns, and that's why the League of Cities and League of Mayors are not in favor of it, because it is so not personal at all. It's everybody in one bucket. So we just have to be creative in what we can do, and the only thing I think we can control is the millage rate opportunity there. And I mean, you hit with what you hit. You just have to see how the vote goes. But
Yeah, we are
we can only do
servants
it.
of the public, and if the public chooses a lower priority property tax rate, then we have to go with that.
We have to go with what
We have to do
can
the
get.
best we
Our
can.
options, which are not.
Doesn't make it fun, doesn't make it easy.
Yeah, and one of the things I had mentioned to Jamie yesterday was, this all comes, to me, it requires education to the public. And how we get out there and educate them on facts versus whatever they see on social media versus preference, whatever. Sure, I'm happy about not having taxes, but I'd be happier if I didn't, this wasn't happening, because I wanna see our city continue to be what it is. And it's gonna really greatly diminish some of the things that we do, which a lot of these festivals and nonprofit support, things that we do, the flags out here, they're so beautiful, things like that. You know, these are things they love and talk about, great to come home to, but, you know, guess what? You vote on that, then that could change. It's gonna change the complexion of who we are, and that's what I have a real issue with. And I just feel like they need to know kind of what's gonna happen, the real fact here. And the business owners, certainly they need to know what they're facing. Not mention the people who rent properties. It's gonna affect them, you know, their properties will be affected. So, I don't know how we go about doing that, but the education's key.
I'd say one more thing and I'm done. And that is at the board of directors meeting for the Florida League of Cities that I went to Thursday before the dinner, we were cautioned, rightfully so, that as public figures, and so this goes to the staff as well as us, we cannot advocate for voting one way or another.
Correct.
So we have to be careful. Now, if you ask me personally, outside of government, I can give you my personal opinion. But at any time when I'm on the dais or I'm representing the city, I have to do exactly what you said, just educate.
Educate only, yep,
Facts and education.
not personal.
And that can be a very powerful thing, but we just have to be careful
Yeah,
that we can't say, you should vote such and such a way. We're not allowed to do that as public servants.
right.
And so, Jamie, if you could just make sure your staff knows that we don't want any legal problems because somebody accidentally did something they shouldn't do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of folks are doing. When Mr. Wanamaker did his presentation to us on the effects that Clay County would see, it was just facts. It was all this data. It was, I mean, he was showing raw facts, one way or the other. And I think that the public deserves to know what's all behind it. There's so much in that decision that's just not poorly planned or laid out, I think. There's a lot of people that feel that way. So, but they're not, it's a very complicated, the way it's written. And I don't know, y'all, when you vote, you're like, I really don't know what this is all about. Average citizen, we know because it's our life, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I know before I got to do these types of things, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the details like that. So, I just feel like, you know, we owe that to the public to let them know the reality, especially our businesses.
You might consider a letter to the editor.
Mhm.
You might write
Yeah,
just with facts.
something, just to be aware.
Yeah. There's a lot of old people
People,
who actually.
they read the papers, I know. Yeah.
All right.
We good?
So I'll just kind of go through what I think the guidance was. We'll do some cleanup on, from the beginning of the meeting. For the budgeting documents, we'll make sure that the total line is in there. I got the guidance on looking at that proposal on cemetery costs and making sure I bring that in front of the city council to apply. Let's see. In the 13th of July meeting, at the CRA board meeting, talk about pocket parks and what needs to be included in its facade grants to make sure that the CRA plan meets, or the CRA budget looks like what we want to do. Let's see. Also, go ahead and build a balanced budget looking at 26-27 without homestead changes. Go ahead and build a balanced budget for that, roughly at an 11% cut across the board. I didn't get guidance on this, but I'll just kind of make sure. I will continue to refine a homestead budget to see what the impact, you know, a ballot initiative budget, what it looks like if it passes, and what we would need to do for those costs. Though it doesn't sound like we want to build the fiscal year 26-27 budget to that at this point. Okay. As far as the millage rate, I proposed one to you. I don't necessarily think that that's what y'all want to bring in front of the city council on the 13th of July. We wanted to look at going in and calculating what we would need to do to change the city policy and what that percentage would be if city policies is no more than a 10% revenue increase. What would that policy change? What would be that percentage increase to get it up to the
4.2901.
4.2901?
So, thinking about our timeline for the millage rate, what is that timeline, Jamie, that we have to, it's coming up.
The city council will need to agree what the maximum millage we're gonna set is on the 13th, or we'll have to have another meeting.
On the 13th of July.
On 13th of July, with the last regularly scheduled meeting where the city council will meet and discuss.
Right, because the August meeting is until after the 4th.
We would be, I think the last city council meeting, I think there's a 3 August meeting. But it would be, we'd have to go and set it the next day, if I remember correctly. So we theoretically could push to that without having to actually reschedule a meeting, now that I think about it.
So you probably have to-
Yes, we do have a 3 August meeting, which would be ahead of the certification trim.
Certainly have to have a discussion.
Should we just stick with where we're at and then move forward with changing it after this mill rate?
I think that's a good plan.
Because I think it's just too quick.
Yeah, we can't change our policy,
Yeah,
and I don't want
it's
to
too quick.
violate our policy.
No, we already have a policy in place which gives us the power to support that
Right.
position.
Right, so I would say, just make it 3.86, just.
As the max.
As the max for this fiscal year.
For this fiscal year. And then that way, after, we get past it in August or September, work on changing the policy in this document to reflect, say, 4.2901 or whatever that
It could be,
percent is.
right.
To leave the max percent.
Mhm. And if this ballot measure passes, it actually takes 2 years to fully be implemented. So we'll still have another year to try to catch up with
Right.
millage rates, if that's the path we choose to go down.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Make sense? I think that's just more doable.
Well, it's another option.
Yeah.
That's what we're paid for, the big bucks for.
I'm just looking over if I needed any more guidance from you all.